Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, AmaZulu King, Mrs. Zulu Kazwelithini, will on Saturday the 9th officiate the Reed dance, also known as Umkhosi Womhlanga, which will take place in Enyokeni Palace, KwaNongoma. Young maidens will present their reeds to the king, a long-standing Zulu culture which, among others, aims to promote sexual abstinence among young girls. For more on this, we're joined by Professor Musa, founder of Indonsa Yesizwe. Professor, good afternoon and thank you very much for your time. Now, talk to us about the origins of this event, because we understand that the late Queen Mantfombi brought the culture Yomhlanga from Eswatini.
Yes, no, thank you very much. There are two sides here. The first side is the actual practice. And the second side, of course, is the symbolism, the ideas that are contained in the practice. The ideas of using reed and the ideas of making young maidens to be closer to the deity of Nomkhubulwane are as old as the beginning of time in terms of Zulu myths of origin. In terms of the practice now of taking the reed and then walking and submitting it to the king, that definitely was introduced in 1984 through the late Queen Mantfombi, who was very passionate about the growth of the relationship of the Zulu culture and the Swazi culture and how the two come together as Ngoni cultures.
So certainly it has evolved over time, but you still perhaps can touch for us on the significance of it, that here we're looking at preserving these maidens, but also just preserving culture broadly speaking.
Yes, it is by and large a cultural event with very little rituality. But yes, it's also to put on display the feminine side of Zuluness. You know that Zuluness is perceived generally as masculine, people of war, people who want to fight, people who are always physically strong and so on. Putting the maidens on display, it starts with walking around. In the past, the queens would walk into every district in KwaZulu-Natal, and then they would be able to teach these maidens what is expected of them. And then, of course, there are other elders, mother elders, who then do other things. There's also something, virginity testing, etc., etc. That happens away from what we will be seeing on Saturday. What you see on Saturday is the culmination of ideas, of cultural ideas, of the myth of origin and the significance of women in not only Zulu culture, but in most African cultures, both in South Africa and in the diaspora.
Professor, when observing interaction around this period, when we're about to have a reed dance and the images that find themselves on social media, it seems an unintended consequence has been somehow normalizing the female body and ensuring that even young men don't sexualize these women, because many are very protective when they see a woman that's bare-chested walking. As a Zulu young lady, many are called to order that we do not sexualize this body. This is what culture is.
No, definitely. You know, interestingly, because I have been attending and recording this ceremony since the 1980s. During the ceremony itself, there is no chance of young men, for example, sexualizing the women's bodies and looking at things other than just the display that they have. But of course, there has been people, who then say, okay, if she goes to Umhlanga, it means she's a virgin. And then you remember in the past, there were also those myths that if you go and sleep with a virgin and you're HIV positive, you'll be cured. So there were all those unintended consequences. However, I must say that maybe in the past, a ceremony like this gets its balance when it is also balanced with the first fruit ceremony, which happens in December. And that first fruit ceremony is where a young man gets, told and mentored out how to behave in society and all of that. I think His Majesty will most possibly also move into strengthening that other ceremony to make sure that there's a balance between paying attention to femininity, of the maidens as well as the masculinity of the males during December.
It's most certainly very, very important. It's a conversation now that let's not only focus on young ladies and their grooming, but let's also groom young men to become responsible citizens who protect women. And then just to the smaller reed dances, we understand there have been those kind of ceremonies building up to the main event, starting with one that took place yesterday in Makobeni. Talk to us about that one.
Well, it's the same structure. The one at Makobeni was more of a regional kind of ceremony where you find that it's mainly maidens from Umkanyagute district, which is there nearer to Swaziland. But also mayors from district mayors, Zululand district, mayors from King Cetshwayo, and mayors from other districts have been drumming up in preparation for next week. And these districts, of course, they are elsewhere, not at Mkhanyakude. So there's this festivity, thinking that maybe this is an opportunity to rebuild and recreate the dignity of young maidens in a manner that integrates society, and municipalities are supporting it. The provincial government is very big at supporting it because, as you may know, it needs a lot of catering, it needs a lot of busing in, it needs lots of accommodation, and in some way it also promotes cultural heritage tourism in the region.
And most certainly we appreciate that we preserve such important cultures. Professor, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Professor Musa, founder of Indonse Yesizwe. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us.